Your phone buzzes. You look down and you see it's your ex. And before you even read that message, something happens in your chest. It's a tightening, it's a bracing because you already know the tone. You know what's in that message. That message comes through an accusation, a demand, a version of you that you don't recognize, stated as fact, sent with force, and waiting for a response. And everything in you wants to respond. You want to correct the record. You want to defend yourself to make sure you don't look like the bad guy, to prove what she said isn't true. So what do? You start typing. If you've been through a divorce and you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been in that moment, and maybe you're in it right now. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why you keep responding when you know you shouldn't, and give you a 3-part filter that will change how you handle it starting today. By the end, you're going to know the difference between a response that's warranted and one that is just fear wearing a disguise. So stay with me. This one is going to hit close to home. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're in the middle of it. You don't have to respond. I know that sounds simple, but for most men in that situation, it does not feel simple at all. It feels like not responding means you are guilty. It feels like silence means you are hiding something. It feels like if you don't defend, the narrative wins. So you respond every time to every accusation, to every demand, to every version of events that isn't accurate. You fire back, you correct, you explain, you justify. And so what does that cost you? It costs you your peace. It costs you your energy. It costs you hours of your day that you'll never get back. And it never, not once, actually resolves anything. Because the goal of that kind of message was never a resolution. It was reaction, and you gave it every time. When you respond to everything, you are not defending yourself. You are proving that you can be controlled. That is the trap. And most men stay in it for years. Now, I want to ask you an honest question. Before your divorce, when you were living your life, going about your day, building what you were building, if someone came to you with an accusation that wasn't true or a demand that wasn't reasonable, would you have felt obligated to respond? I would probably bet not. You would have addressed that, what was worth addressing, and let the rest go because you had a filter. You had a sense of what you owed people and what you didn't. Divorce removes that filter. It makes you feel like you're on trial, like every accusation requires a defense, like silence is admission and non-engagement is abandonment. But here is what is actually happening in those moments. You are not responding because it's warranted. You are responding because you're afraid of how you will look, afraid of what you will tell the kids, afraid of what happens if the narrative goes unchallenged, afraid of being misunderstood by people whose opinion of you cannot control anyway. Fear-based responding is not communication. It is just a more sophisticated version of flinching. And a steady man does not build his life on flinching. I have sat with man after man who is exhausted by this pattern. Good men, men who love their kids, men who are generally trying to do the right thing, and almost every single one of them is spending enormous amounts of emotional energy responding to the things they were never obligated to respond to in the first place. The divorce did not create new obligations, it just created new fear, and fear dressed up as an obligation is one of the most effective traps a man can fall into. So, what does a steady man actually do? He operates by a simple filter. And this filter applies not just to a difficult ex, it applies to anyone in your life who demands more than they are owed. The first part of the filter is this: is the response warranted or is it fear driven? Warranted means the situation genuinely requires your input. There is a decision to be made about the kids. There is a logistical matter that needs coordinating. There is something factual that needs clarification for a practical reason. Fear driven means you're responding because you're afraid of the consequences of not responding. You're trying to manage a perception. You're trying to control a narrative. You are trying to prevent an outcome that may happen regardless of what you say. Warranted responses get a response, and fear driven responses do not. That is the filter. It sounds simple because it is. The difficulty is not understanding it. The difficulty is having the steadiness to apply it when your chest is tight and your thumbs are already moving across the screen. Now, the second part of the filter is this: own what is yours, don't own what isn't. This is where a lot of men go wrong in the other direction. They hear you don't have to respond to everything, and they use that as permission to avoid accountability. This is not what I'm saying. If you did something wrong, just own it directly, cleanly, without over explaining. A steady man does not hide from legitimate accountability. But if the accusation is not accurate, if it is manipulation or pressure or an attempt to get a reaction, you do not owe that a response. Owning what is yours is not the same as accepting every version of events someone else wants to assign to you. A steady man knows the difference between accountability and capitulation, and he does not confuse them because the pressure is high. The third part of the filter is the hardest one. Silence is not guilt. This is the belief that keeps most men trapped. The idea that if they don't respond, they are somehow admitting to what was said. That narrative wins by default. But here's what I have learned from my own experience and from walking alongside men in this situation for years. The people who matter already know who you are. Your kids know who you are. The people in your life who have actually watched you show up know who you are. You do not need to convince them with a text message at 11 o'clock at night. And the people who have already decided who you are, nothing you say will change that. Not one response, not 100 responses, not the perfect, airtight, completely accurate correction of every false thing that has been said about you. Silence in the face of accusation is not weakness. It is the decision of a man who knows who he is and does not need external validation to remain standing. Proverbs 26:4 says this: "Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are." Read that again. Don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. This is not a verse about contempt. It is not calling your ex a fool. It is making a point about what happens to you when you engage with arguments that are not designed for. When you step into that kind of engagement, when you match accusation with defense and demand with justification, you are pulled down to the level of the argument. You stop being a steady man and start being a reactive one. And a reactive man is not in control of himself. He is being controlled by whoever can most reliably provoke him. The wisdom in this verse is not about the other person, it is about you. It's about protecting your clarity, your dignity, and your ability to stay focused on what actually matters. Guard what you engage with, because what you engage with sharpens who you become. I want to tell you what changes when a man starts operating this way. The first thing that changes is his energy. When you stop responding to everything, you get hours back. Hours you were spending in your head, composing responses, researching arguments, replaying conversations. That energy goes somewhere else, into your kids, into your work, into building something that actually matters. The second thing that changes is the dynamic. And this is the part that surprises most men. When you stop reacting, the provocations often decrease. Not always, but often, because the reaction was the reward. When the reward stops coming, the behavior frequently changes. And the third thing that changes is the most important one: your relationship with yourself. There is something that happens inside a man when he realizes he does not need to defend himself to feel okay. When he can put the phone down without his hand shaking. When he can let a false accusation sit unanswered and still know who he is when he goes to bed at night. That is not arrogance. That is not indifference. That is a man who has found something solid inside himself that does not move when the pressure comes from outside. That is quiet confidence, and it cannot be performed. It cannot be faked. It is built slowly through exactly the kind of hard decisions we have been talking about in this series. My own relationship with my ex is in a good place now. It has not always been, but I can tell you that the turning point was not a conversation. It was not a confrontation. It was the moment I stopped needing her to see me a certain way in order for me to feel okay about who I was. That is when things got quieter, and quieter was better for everyone, especially my kids. So here is what we've covered today. You keep responding because fear is telling you that silence means guilt. It doesn't. A warranted response gets a warranted response. A fear-driven one doesn't. Own what is yours, let the rest go. This week, one thing, before you respond to that next message that makes your chest tight, ask yourself this question. Am I responding because this is warranted, or am I responding because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? That one question will tell you everything you need to know. You are not on trial. You are a man building a life, and a man building a life does not stop construction every time someone throws something at the fence. If this landed for you, subscribe. Please do. Because in the next episode, we're going to talk about what actually builds a man from the inside out. We've spent a lot of time on what drains a man. Now we're starting to talk about what fills him back up. That's in episode 29, The Strength of Quiet Confidence. And it goes far deeper than anything we have covered so far. So I'm Kirk Taylor, and I'll see you in the next episode.